Welcome back to another episode of the Statues Podcast. I am your host, Denang.
And I'm your co-host, Crystal.
For today's episode, we have a clip, so we're going to go ahead and start with that clip.
This concept states that a person's birth order plays a major role in how an individual's personality is shaped. Families place unrealistic expectations on the eldest child, and because they are no longer the only child, they must adapt to change. In turn, they become perfectionists, people pleasers, and authoritative, yet extremely helpful. They learn to bear most of the responsibility. Can you relate?
For this clip, when I saved the video, I think I had in mind that you and I we could talk about it because we are both the eldest in our families. But with that also comes the background of our parents and their traditional ways.
We're both Asians, but it sounds weird when I say this, but your Asian culture is similar, yes, but there are different expectations that that our Asian cultures have too at the same time. That clashes because we're both the eldest.
Yeah. And I think with being the eldest, we are similar in many ways, but there are also major differences. And I think those differences come with how our heritage and culture kind of is, and our people too, right? Our people with Hmong people, they're more male strong-headed. What I've come to realize about Vietnamese people is you guys are female head dominated. The females have a very like tiger mom kind of attitude. And with this tiger mom attitude, like they raise their kids with that intensity as well. And because of that, I think not only were we the eldest, but I think when we started dating, the both of that started to clash together. Like even throughout our period of dating, your mom and I, we had a lot of
Differences of opinion. You guys butted
way.
heads a lot too.
Oh yeah.
Because you guys both have very strong like personalities too. It has nothing to do with like putting that aside. There was your personalities are very strong, and you guys know what you want. So I think that's why you guys can't be on the same page, only because how you see things is very different from how she sees things.
And I think it kind of, it puts this burden on a child. Like for me, I come from a very traditional background. My dad is in terms of what they would call in modern day society a shaman, right? And when you're a shaman, there comes a lot of responsibility. Well, with that responsibility comes a lot of also learning. And when my dad was going through that stage, I was in my late teens and early 20s, so I wasn't around for a lot of it. I was still, doing my work, getting all that shit done. It then hits me in my early 20s that, oh shit, this responsibility, this familial responsibility that I'm supposed to have. And you now bear that burden. And I felt that burden hit me real hard in my early 20s. That's why, in my early 20s, I wanted to have a successful career because I knew that, you know, Asian parents talk about this all the time. When I die, well, now because they talked about it, and I'm talking about like my dad talked about it when I was like 16, 17.
Me too.
And my dad's not even that old.
No, you guys are maybe like 16 years apart because your dad was 15, 16. Your
My
mom
dad
was
is
14,
my dad
15.
was 18, so we have an 18-year difference. But because of that, you hear that as a kid and it weighs a lot on you and the decisions that you make throughout your life. And I know that that was also the case for you because I know that you suffered a lot because of it.
I think the first time I heard my dad say that, I was maybe in grade, like actually talk about it. I was in grade 7, 6 or 7, but like my dad's depression was already like way before that. I was still like pretty much like in terms to compared to like mentality wise, I was like baby mentality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So but like that burden of having to, you know, constantly think about how, you know, my dad's always like, oh, when I die you have to take care of your mom,
Yeah.
you know, or when I die you have to, you know, like do this and this. And it's like, but I'm still young, like you still got time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And those responsibilities didn't really hit me until, or like just my acknowledgement of it and my full understanding of it until after my dad passed away.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of brutal.
I mean,
How like
it
it
came
happened.
at you. It came at you pretty headstrong because it came out of nowhere too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because it came out of nowhere, you didn't have that adjustment time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with you, it was extremely different from how it was for me. With me, yeah, my dad talked about it, but I still had a lot of freedom to do the shit that I needed to do. And because I did, okay, then gradually I learned to get into it. I learned about familial responsibilities. Okay, well now I'm gonna hustle. I'm gonna try and make as much money as I can. I'm gonna try to do the best that I can so that I can build up this wealth so that my mom, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, my own family, they have that backup.
Mm-hmm.
But with you, there was no, like, you were what, like 15 when your dad passed. So at the age of 15,
No,
16.
I was 17 because I remember it was grade 11 was when my dad passed away. You turn 18
Oh,
when you're
right,
like
right, right.
in grade 12, but
So
I
you
was
were 17 when you had to, you know, you had to sit there and take on the entire burden and try to understand certain things that you're not meant to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't help that, you know, I'm not saying that your mom wasn't helpful. I'm saying that your mom is a tiger mom. So the way she likes to teach people, the way she likes to teach you kids is go do it. This is this is life. If you fall, you fall. If you rise, you rise.
Yeah, but it was also like during that time it was like I'm a kid who lost their dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need that like emotional support. Like I need someone to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more so like you're the oldest. You can deal with it on your own. But how is a 17-year-old kid who thought their dad was going to live with like or like stay alive for, you know, a little while longer? How is a 17-year-old supposed to grasp the fact that their father just passed away? How do you deal with that grief? And like 7 years later, I'm still trying to, you know, figure out and just only recently starting to just, you know,
Piece together your life.
yeah, piece together my life and just like grasping like those small bits that I lost during those times. You know, it's like 7 years. You're like, you know, it's 7 years. It's a long time, but it's such a short amount of time. It doesn't seem long enough when you've lost your father so young in life.
Yep. No, and I think that's the thing about being the eldest is those responsibilities hit you a little harder than most, right? Like, as the eldest of my family, you know, there's always that thought of what if something were to happen to my parents. I'm always constantly worried about an accident or this or that, or you know, like what if a state of emergency happens? Well, I'm the oldest. I have to protect everyone, and this comes with hyper independence. You build that hyper independence because you know that you have to protect them. So to protect them, you also think you shouldn't ask them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I grew that hyper independence where even at my lowest, I wouldn't like, even when I was homeless, I never came home. I would have rather suffered on my own every second of it by myself so that my parents were okay, so that my parents were good. And that hyper independence, it grows as you continue, right? It goes into your 20s. It goes into your 30s. You grow into that hyper independence. That hyper independence became a part of me even at the lowest part of my life. When everything fell, well, I was already so used to protecting everyone that okay, I'm gonna do it for myself. And you become also like they were saying you become a people pleaser. Yeah, we are both major people pleasers.
That's why, like, emotionally too, we talk to each other, but at the same time, there's a lot emotionally that goes on that we just don't talk about, just because during those times where we were going through, like that, that phase in our life, we just don't talk about our feelings, just because there's no time to talk about it. Because if you talk about it, it means you have to acknowledge what's going on, and then you have to go through, like the stages of grief that you go through to acknowledge whatever's happening. But we became such huge people pleaser that now, being able to do what I want to do and doing it at my own pace, kind of like inside this bubble that I have, I realize how much of like a negative thing it was. Not all of it was bad, but it
No,
was more so the after effects
yeah,
that was
there
bad.
are some good things that come to it. But 90% of what comes with people pleasing is a lot of the cleanup at the end of it. Like right now, we're just cleaning up our own lives. Like that's basically it. We haven't started our life. We haven't started our life. We've only simply cleaned up. And now, it's to a point where I think being the eldest, you also have to be willing to be open minded to a lot more things. Right? That open mindedness and learning that your parents are just humans. So they're gonna fuck up. And that was one of the things that you and I we had to learn was that your mom, my parents, they were human. And that we couldn't fault them anymore. For us to all just go and become better people, we needed to accept that fact. But I think that was harder because we were older. And because we were older, there's a lot of teaching our siblings that. And trying to teach them is so hard because, well, we've gone through that stage too where no, they're your parents. They're up on this pedestal. To you, your parents are up on this pedestal. They can do no wrong. And if they do wrong, then you fault them for the rest of your life. And it's like going back and trying to teach them, trying to fix that habit of, hey, you know, they're human. But your siblings don't look at you in that light. They don't see you as a person that's doing good. They see you as an annoyance. And because of that annoyance, now it's, the relationship between you and your siblings becomes straight.
But it's also the fact that, like, for us, as when they say that we try to have as much authority as we can, it's that aspect where, like, we've gone through it, and then now our siblings are going through it, but I hate to say this, okay, but sometimes they follow in our footsteps because they see us as like an adult, as like sometimes a role model, and they follow those footsteps. And then you sort of become like a parent with that authority, but also as a sibling, and you're like, no, like, you need to back it up. Take 15 steps back, okay, and then go the opposite direction, or take a different turn, because it kind of sucks because you see them following your footsteps, and then you start feeling worried, and there's like there's like so many emotions running through your head, and
Because you know what the end result of that led up to, And I feel you because my brother's like that with me. Where, for a while in my brother and my relationship, when I left in Mississauga, I knew that he felt like I abandoned this family. And I had left to go move on to a new family. But because my brother and I, we don't have that communication, and we didn't have that communication, he was almost like soaking in it. He soaked in that mindset. And so when I did, when I caught on to it and I started to see his behavior become like mine, it became like mine in my early 20s. So he was now following my footsteps. And, every time you would go and you talk to him, or you go and you would talk to a sibling, well, now it's an annoyance. They think, well, why are you telling me this? You did it. And look how you turned out. You turned out much better than, you were when at this age. But, it's those things that it's like, I don't need you to fail if I can tell you what is at the end of that road. I'd rather you not fail. I'd rather you not know what it feels like to lose everything, or to be in this much debt, or to have absolutely nothing and worry about debt.
Or like, I always go back to this because that's such a huge factor and it affects your mental health, is the emotional strain that you go through. And I think that's what, like, for like my own family, like when I see my sister doing the things that she does, I think she thinks the same thing, where like I left, like my family, to go be with another family. Because I'm not saying this is for all, okay, just for me and like my family, the family that I was raised in, the Vietnamese culture that I grew up in, was more so the eldest. Doesn't matter if you're boy or girl, the eldest, you are responsible for taking care of your family. So I happen to be the eldest, and so I kind of just picked up my stuff and I just left, even though she knew that I was going to leave. She was actually probably the only person that knew somewhere deep down that I was going to leave. And I think that's why she's so hurt, and she's taking certain steps that are like mimicking of what I did. And I get so peeved, and I'm just like, I don't want you to fail. I don't want you to have to go and deal with all this debt, because I've gone to school like 3 times before this. So this is 4 times. Okay. I've gone to school 3 times before this, and that's a lot of debt. Okay. That's a lot of debt that you should be dealing with. And it affects you emotionally and mentally, because now you feel like you're alone. You feel like no one really can understand you, even though you know that you have somebody there with you. And with my sister, it irks me so much, because it's like you said, I don't want you to fail. I don't want you to go through what it is that I went through. It's not a happy journey, just because maybe I'm in a better like state now. Are you going to take the same steps that I did? Probably not. We're 2 different people, but it's just,
and like, if we were to talk about that situation, right? I understand, because my brother's like that. My brother is one of those headstrong people, hyper independence.
I know, but in the wrong way, I feel like.
And both, I think my brother and your sister have that hyper independence because they have a sense of abandonment. But that sense of abandonment also comes from misunderstanding. Like, and I've said this to you, like, I understand what it looks like from their perspective when I took you. It looks like we ran. But, it was hard because I thought if it was people that would understand me, it would be my own brother or be your sister that would understand what we were doing. Because it was never about leaving. It was about leaving to clear the air so that we could come back and fix everything in a better mindset, in a better way, so that there wasn't always fighting. There wasn't always clashing. But, and this is where it gets a little tricky, right? As an older sibling, you will always take fault for everything that happens. Their failures and their successes. Whether they become successful, it's great. But when they fail, it hurts 100 times more, because now you understand that you had a contributing factor to why they fell. And it becomes like that when you're an older sibling, where you can only do so much. And when you can't do anything anymore, as an older sibling, we're not like other people. We will watch. And we watch every step of the way. We watch you fall every step. And when you hurt, we hurt. We hurt when we watch you from afar. We might not talk to you. You know, you might not think that we care. You might not think that we're watching. You might not think that we understand. But as older siblings, we will always carry that guilt. And we will always carry that the understanding that we had a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that we wish we could have done better. You know, like with your sister, yeah, there is always going to be a guilt that you and we had a hand in raising her. But because of that hand and how she ended up being, you can't help but feel at fault too. And, you know, even with my brother, you know, when we had the opportunity to move, one of the reasons why I asked my mom and my dad if I could take my brother with me was so that I could slowly build that relationship again. Even if my brother's at an age where he can now look at me and say, I understand what you did. I understand why you did it. I will always feel at fault because he felt it in the first place. And as an older brother, I should have never made you feel that way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it gets difficult. It gets difficult when we are the eldest and we look at the younger ones and we can tell that there's pain.
It feels like we're like suffocated.
Yeah, we're suffocated because no matter what, that guilt of knowing that you even feel an ounce of pain because of us. If it was other people, that's fine. We will help you. We will fix you. Mm-hmm. But because it's us, when we try to grab our hands into it, it's almost like a double-edged sword. It hurts you and it makes you feel better because we're there. But the fact that we're there because we hurt you will always hurt us. You know, and it's difficult. I say at least it's difficult because I had always felt a sense of guilt that my brothers and my sisters thought I left and abandoned them to go and have my own family. You know what I mean? Like, it hurts. It hurts that people think that or they thought that. But they're young, so I understand that. I understand why you would think that. But then when I look at your sister, well, I raised her too. And I was a part of her life for a very long time. You know, the moment we started dating, it was almost like she was there the moment we started dating, all the way until the end. And, you know, like, I remember having a conversation with your sister because your sister and I, like, what people don't understand was that, like, we were close. When she had troubles and she couldn't talk to you, then she'd come talk to me about it. And that's what I think some people don't understand, why that pain hurts a lot more for me. Because this time, you know, like when I look at my brothers and I look at my sisters, well, they're my brothers and my sisters. So there is a specific guilt for that. But with your sister, it was that border of, for a while, we crossed that border of being an older brother and father figure. So because it crossed that border, I knew that it hurt you because your relationship also changed. Your relationship changed when your dad passed away as older sister to now parental. And because it was parental, well, she couldn't see that you were also growing. She couldn't see that you're human too. And as a kid, you don't know what's right and what's wrong. You don't know what parenting is. How do we know? You know, we're only doing the best that we can. And maybe the advice that we told you yesterday is going to be different from today. And we're sorry for the confusion. We're sorry for that. But it got difficult because the relationship was now, we were no longer looked at. And, you know, and what I mean by this is, like, when I say I look at my parents as humans now, that's how these kids look at us. We're not humans. We're their older sibling. We're their parental figure. We can't do wrong. So the moment we did wrong, they can't forgive us. They will never forgive us. because now it's like being stabbed in the back, and them and us holding that knife as they turn around and see face to face who it is. You know what I mean? Like, for my parents, it took me a long time for me to look at my parents and be like, damn, you're gonna fuck up too. You're human too. That everything wrong that you guys have ever did, I can't fault you guys for. That I have to look at you guys like you guys are human. Because now we're at an age where we are in that position where these people that look at us and think that we are bad people because we're that figure to them now. And I think that's one of the biggest burdens that we carry as older siblings. You know, like, I carry that guilt every day. That's why I told my brother to come live with me. When we moved out, I had to ask you if it was okay, because I wanted my brother to know what kind of a person I was, what kind of a person I became. That over the years, it's not what you thought. And I'm not going to be able to tell you that, because even if I tell you, will you be willing to understand?
Will you believe me?
Yeah.
It's more so trying to convince them to understand, not understand, but try to see you for who you are now. It's a long journey, and for me, I feel like I feel bad when I say this, but right now, with how everything is, for me, I just want to almost like put a pause on it and just be like, like I just I can't keep trying and trying and trying when the other person isn't willing to open their eyes and see that I'm just trying to help. Like, it might not come off that way. It might not be the way you want the help to be, but this is my way of trying to help you.
Yeah.
This is the only way that I know how to. This is the only way that you and I can communicate with each other as sisters, as siblings, to be like, hey, I'm just trying. Okay, I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. But there are times where I just feel like I just want to press the pause button and just stop. And then when I'm okay again, I just, press play again, because it's such a huge emotional strain where, like, you think you're helping, but then they don't see it, and then it's just back and forth, like, it sounds stupid, but it's like cat fights between you and your sibling, and you're constantly arguing, and I'm just like, life is short. We don't need to argue about this. Like, that's just it.
And that's the hardest part, is that as you get older, you start to see certain things that you did. And now you look at it, and now when you're looking at it, well, now you're looking at your younger sibling. And it's them mirroring everything that you've done. And you just can't help but feel like that huge guilt. And, like, I feel bad because I know I feel bad because when I left Kitchener, I was in my early 20s. Oh, okay. So I was
Wait,
around,
to live with us?
yeah. So I was
24.
like 23, 24. And when I left at 23, 24, my younger sister, I think she was just finishing up high school.
No.
Or college.
No, if she was in her first year of college, she was just finishing up her first year of college.
And, like, I always feel this guilt. I always have this guilt to my baby sister there, that I missed out on your life. You know what I mean? Like, I was grateful that she would try with me. But at that time, I was so busy with my life, so busy with my career, so busy with everything around me, that I missed out on hers. And because I missed out on it, I feel bad that I was a bigger brother to someone else, that I couldn't be the bigger brother to my own. And like, you always feel that. As you get older, you start to realize that finding balance between every part of your life becomes one of the hardest things to do. Your friendships, your own family, your second family, everything becomes like a juggling game. And because you're trying to juggle everything, you also get to a point where at one time you just feel like you're not there with anyone. At one time in our relationship, I just felt like I wasn't there with you. I wasn't there with your sister. I wasn't there with my parents, with my siblings. Wasn't there with my own family. Because now I needed the time to just breathe. Because I was suffocating from trying to find a balance between everything. But and I think that's what people don't talk about when you're the eldest, is balance. And I'm not saying that like other siblings don't go through it. It's a balance for everyone. But I think with us as elder siblings, it borders parental. You border that parental feeling.
Because you kind of take it upon yourself, where you start saying, it's like you said earlier, it's like, what happened, and God forbid, like, I don't want anything to happen to our parents, but it's like, what if something were to happen to our parents?
Yeah.
And they're still young. Who's going to help guide them for like the next part of their life?
Yeah. Like, that's the one thing that scares me the most, is like, what happens? Because I've gone through it. Because I've gone through mourning over your own dad. I've gone through mourning my mentors, my teachers. I've gone through loss so many times in my life now that I now know how to cope with it. But I look at my brothers and my sisters, and I know that if it gets to that point, then what would happen? Because am I going to be strong enough? I have to build myself to be strong enough for that specific moment. That specific moment as the eldest son. And not only the eldest son, but the eldest brother to all my siblings.
You have to, though. It's
Yeah.
like,
'Cause
there's
you
no
can't-
choice for
you can't
us.
crack. Because if you crack, well, now these kids, they need you. You can't fall. You cannot fall apart.
There's no room for, it's almost like that saying, there's no room for failure. There really isn't, because if we were to crack, or we showed like one ounce of weakness, is game over.
Yeah.
It really feels like game over, because now they start questioning, can they really like put their trust in you? Can they trust that in their hardest times you are going to be strong enough to have their back?
Yeah.
But maybe you won't. Maybe you're not strong enough, but you gotta. It's like, fake it till you make it, really.
As someone who had to experience that already once with you guys, when your dad passed, like, I understand that maybe I hadn't known your dad for that long. Maybe I hadn't had a relationship the way people think. But what people don't understand was that your dad was like a dad to me. He taught me things about my own dad, ways that I should have treated my dad. We had father-son conversations, and I wasn't even his son. We had conversations about things that, I still hold dear to me. But the moment he passed away, I had to put all of that aside. I had to put my feelings as a son away and become someone else. And I remember, like, yeah, it wasn't pretty. Trust me. When your dad passed away, it was not a pretty sight afterwards. I whooped you and your sister back into shape so fast. But that was the only way I could cope with it. And I couldn't crack. I had to be as strong as I could for your mom, for you and your sister. Like, and that's what is extremely hard. Is that, I've had people over the years tell me, you changed. Well, that's the thing, is I don't think I've changed. I think I just seen more.
And it's not to like compare you to other people. And it's like until you've experienced that kind of, it sounds weird, okay? But for me, this is how I feel like. Until you've experienced death like that, where it's somebody you grew up with, and your aunts and uncles, you'll feel sorry, like not sorry, but you'll feel sad without a doubt. But when it's your own parent, your own flesh and blood, it does something to you. It really does something. Okay, it just so happens that you and my dad were able to connect because maybe at that time you and your dad, couldn't connect, and maybe you couldn't understand each other. But it's that point where like you have a connection with them, and then they die.
They die right when that spark happens.
It
And
sucks. It sucks balls.
and that's the thing, right? Is what people don't understand is when what her dad did for me was reconnect me back to my parents. He had conversations with me that other people were too scared to have. He lectured me like a father. And that's what people don't understand. Like, people don't understand how much he lectured me, how long we had conversations. Like how deep these conversations got. These were conversations that I don't even have with my dad, and my dad and I were close. This was about like him digging, like your dad was depressed, and I knew that. But this was past depression. This was the sadness in the depression that he was talking about now. The steps 1 to 10, and he was telling me everything about it. And then all of a sudden, he passes away. And the moment I look at his kids, because at that moment, I didn't look at you like my girlfriend anymore. I had already looked at him like he was my dad. And all of a sudden, I lost my dad. So when I looked at that situation, well, I looked at my own dad and I was like, fuck. This could have been my dad. Because your dad and my dad were basically the same. The way they were as people. I saw reflections of my dad within your dad. Mm-hmm. And then, when he talked to me, he would always say, well, you're the eldest son. And he would talk to me and he would tell me these responsibilities that an eldest son had.
I think those were also, something that my dad spoke to you about because one, he has have a brother,
Yep.
half brother, but then he himself is also the eldest amongst all his brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. But my dad left when he was, I would say, in his like teens, like maybe 18, because he was still like able to work here when he came to Canada. Mm-hmm. But like he was young, so he left his family, back home, came here, tried to build a life for himself. And then, him being the eldest, not being there for his family. I think there were things that my dad also felt. One, having a son and not being able to teach him. And two, being the eldest son himself. So when he had these conversations to you, I think it was also him maybe talking through his own thoughts and feelings that he just couldn't talk to me about because it's weird, and I'm not trying to make it about gender.
Yep.
But it really is because I'm a girl and I just don't understand how it feels like to be one, a man, and two, being the eldest son.
Yeah, because like I remember having a conversation with him, and it was about being the eldest son, right? And it was like, I don't know how we started this conversation, but he asked me, why isn't my relationship with my dad good? And it kind of like I was cut off guard because I don't know. And then he goes, as eldest son comes responsibility. You cannot run. The farther you run, responsibility chases. And if you do not look back, it will hit you. And like that's just me summarizing what he said, but these conversations that I had with him were so deep. It's as if he was talking to his own son that he missed. And I felt that. I felt like he was talking to your brother because he couldn't talk to him. And this was the easiest way for him to do it. And like that was what was hard. Was like my responsibility to your family afterwards. I felt like my own family, not that they had like a, not like they felt something towards it, but more so they looked at me and kind of were like, why couldn't you do this for us? You know?
I'm not gonna say this all has to do with your family and your culture, but for you guys as men, you don't go and you don't be with the woman's
100%.
family.
100%.
And so I feel like for how they felt, it's more so like, why would you leave your family, okay, to go live with a woman's family? Like your family's teaching and your culture has been ingrained in you since you guys were
Man, since I was
breathing.
born, man, the moment I was born, the way our teachings, our heritage, our tradition, it was there every step of that way.
So for a man, for a son who's the eldest in his family, doesn't matter if you are the youngest of all the boys in just your family alone, okay, your immediate family, you're the eldest son. So I think they they couldn't see why you were doing it. And I'm not saying that they have to, okay? I can't blame them. That it's how they were raised. It's the culture that is, has been taught to them. They eat, breathe, sleep, this kind of thing. But I think it has to mainly, do with that. That's why they feel that way. By no means am I saying that, maybe time needs to change, like everybody needs to kind of have a different way of thinking. I'm not saying that way was the best either. Okay. There were
No,
many
like
wrongs to
I'm
it, but
not like I know what I did was wrong, and my mom, my dad, and I we had this conversation when I left. Like I remember my mom and my dad talking to me about it. Like, hey, people are gonna see it this way, but your mom and I, we support you. That if this is what you think you need to do, then you go and do it. That your mom and I, we will be here. And I think it's because my parents are so chill about it, so understanding about it, that's why I hold so much more burden on my heart, on my chest, on my shoulders. I hold all of that burden because of how accepting my parents were. And because they were so much more accepting than I thought they were going to be, that, like, it holds guilt every step of that way. Like, when I found out that my brother thought that, yeah, it hurt. When I'm able to look back and, the way I treated my sister, that hurt. When I look at my baby sister, that hurts. Because it's the eldest, you have a standard, and you're born with these standards. You understand the moment that you are able to understand what these standards are. When you look at it now, it kind of hurts. Because now, you don't meet those standards. But yet you are still the eldest. So you're constantly changing to meet those standards. And because of that, like, I'll say this is that I hate the word big brother because everyone calls me that. It is a title that has so much like burden. My brother calls me that. My brothers from another mothers call me that. Then, Your baby sister calls me that. Your sister called me that. But then it got to a point where the responsibility, I didn't know where it was going, where it was anymore. Where is my responsibility? These guys are my brothers. That's my sister. Your sisters are my sisters. Your sisters are also, they boarded that parental, I boarded that parental part with them. And then, your mom calls me big brother to your sisters. So it's like, where am I supposed to be?
Yeah, I get it. It's like I hate this term, and you and I talked about it too. It's like blood is thicker than water. Like, do I go to where my blood is calling to me, my flesh and blood, or do I go to these people that didn't have guidance and have adopted me like into the family as a brother? So where am I supposed to go? I can't go down the middle because it will not satisfy either one. And it's like where do you go?
It is so tricky.
I feel like if you are an older sibling, and I'm not saying just older sibling, but I feel like if you are an older sibling, you can understand this more clearly than any other, because there are responsibilities that you bear. And when I say this, and you've gone through something similar, it's like, which one do you choose? There's no right. It doesn't feel like there's a right and wrong, but to the people that need you, it is a right and it is a wrong.
When it comes to being an older sibling, or when people think of you as an older sibling, you don't understand in the moment how much weight that bears. It is only afterwards that the weight is there crushing you to the point where to the point of asphyxiation. And now what do you do? It gets difficult. It gets hard. Like, I hate, like I said, I hate the term big brother, because big brother for me, as much as there's so much love and happiness that comes with it, there is so much shame, so much
Pain.
pain, so much, like, everything associated to that term. When I hear your baby sisters call me big brother, it hurts. It hurts because we can't be there. It hurts that I can't give her the love that I used to give her. And then, when I look at my own brothers and sisters, it's almost like shameful for me when they look at me and they tell me, "Oh, that's my bigger brother." I feel shame.
It's like, you call me your big brother, but I don't feel like I'm your big brother. Like, I don't feel like I've done enough to earn that title of being called a big brother. It's just by default that, I was born first, that you call me older brother. But do I really deserve it though? Like I'm asking myself this, and maybe you question it too.
And like, my job, this is where, like, even in my job, I hate it. My job has always been about creating a family atmosphere. But also in this family atmosphere comes a lot of misunderstanding and unresolved issues.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And, people that used to call me big brother, I look at it and it hurts. It hurts that when I look at them, I couldn't have done more for them. When I look at these people that were my brothers and my sisters, as we were friends, but we got to the point where we were brothers and sisters. I went to their graduations. I went to their first recitals. I went to their first practices. I picked them up from prayer. When you think of it like that, there's so much shame and burden that comes with all of that. Because now, what do? You know, when you look at your own brothers and your sisters, when I look at your sister, it hurts. It hurts that we can't do what we were expected to do. What keeps me going is the fact that if you and I, people that are dumb, can figure out that our parents are just human, then maybe one day someone would look at me like I'm just human. You know? And that's it. I look forward to the fact that maybe someone one day can just be like, he's human. It's okay. You know? I wanted to say thank you guys so much for listening in on today's podcast. Today's podcast, I honestly had no idea what direction it was going to go, but I knew that it was going to be a great conversation starter. For those that are listening and for those that continue to listen to our podcast, I would love to reach out to all of you guys. The email is down in the description in all of our streaming platforms and on YouTube. Our email is in there. We would love to talk to people you know or people like you and get to know our community, get to know our members. It would be great to, have conversations like this where Crystal and I, we can further our learning on life. Learning doesn't stop. And we're reaching out now to all of you guys. So you guys can email us or find us on Instagram at The Statues Podcast. DM us, and let's get something started. Thank you guys again so much for listening to this episode. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We are releasing every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are doing it once a week instead of 2 times a week. This is your host and your co-host signing off. Thank you guys.